Continuing our story, the next morning in the production meeting, the supervisors were reviewing recent issues. After discussing yesterday's case packer problems, Pauline Shaw, one of the production supervisors, decides that there needs to be an introductory training program for that piece of equipment. The case packer is typically the place new hires start, so the learning curve is great. Pauline logs into AVEVA Teamwork to create a skill that will be required for all operators and maintenance employees. To create the new skill, Pauline will simply follow the steps. First, she picks a category, which is going to be operations. Within operations, this skill will have a subcategory that is called equipment specific. It is going to be a basic level skill and should be reviewed for updates every year. Pauline estimates that the training she is putting together will take about 4 hours to complete, but she can go and update that later once she has finalized the skill materials. The skill is applicable to the Chicago plant, but can later be shared with other areas of the corporation if needed. The next section allows Pauline to link the skill to a piece of equipment and to a user title, which is a job type. Pauline is going to require that all operators and mechanics be certified on this skill. By linking the skill in this way, it allows AVEVA Teamwork to automatically assign the skill to all the users who need it. It is also possible to assign specific users individually if required. Now, Pauline will move on to the content section, where the real substance of the skill is configured. Here, she can create steps, add existing content, such as work instructions and troubleshoots, add new content, such as documents, videos, and pictures, and even set up assessments and exams. After naming the skill, Pauline creates the first step, which is going to be about learning the basics of the case packer. She gives the step a title and then begins adding content. First, she adds an external link, which will connect the user to a video about the case packer. Next, she adds text, which is simply an instruction to the operators. She tells them to physically assess the equipment and find the e-stop locations. For the last part of this step, she adds an assessment. This is a special type of content that requires collaboration with a coworker, usually a supervisor or SME. For example, an assessment can require that a person demonstrate a physical skill to their supervisor. In our demo, once the user is able to demonstrate the capabilities identified by Pauline, they can schedule a time to show their supervisor, who will then sign off on that assessment within their own login to AVEVA Teamwork. Now, Pauline is going to add a second step to this new skill. Step 2 is going to cover how to start up the case packer. Here, she is going to utilize existing work instructions. To do this, she simply picks the work instruction content type and then specifies which work instruction she wants to link to. By including the work instructions in a skill, Pauline can make sure that every new operator or mechanic reviews the existing documentation. Pauline wants to make sure new hires know that there are documented solutions to common problems. For this reason, she makes Step 3 all about troubleshoots. In a similar way as in Step 2, Pauline simply links existing troubleshoots into this new skill. Here, we see she's including the newest troubleshoot about the suction pressure that we created in the first demo. For the last step, Pauline is going to include an exam so that users can demonstrate what they've learned. It is possible to select an exam that has already been created, but Pauline wants to make a new one, so she can do it right from here. First, Pauline needs to set up basic information about the exam, such as its category, whether to allow users to access their answers after taking the test, and which location owns the exam. An important part here is to designate a passing score. Next, it's time to add content. Like skills, exams can have sections. In each section, Pauline can choose whether the questions will be in a preset order, whether there will be a bank of questions that the exam pulls from, or whether the questions will be in a randomized order. Each section also has a designated passing score separate from the overall exam score. Now it's time for the questions. For each question, Pauline chooses if it's a single or multiple choice or true-false, as well as the points designated for that specific question. The points allow some questions to be more important than other questions in the section. Then she enters the question as well as the possible answers. All that's left is to make sure to identify the correct answer. Pauline will continue to add another section and a few more questions, but we'll let her do this on her own and come back at the end. Pauline saves her exam and is then taken back into the skill she has been developing. From there, she simply saves and her job is complete. Now let's revisit Isabella. As an operator, she should now be required to complete Pauline's new skill. Logging into her account on the iPad, she can now see the skill listed under a new section called Case Packer. Isabella now gets started on completing her skill. Let's focus in on the assessment and the exam portions of the skill. Isabella is going to choose to do the exam first and then ask for the assessment at the end. Upon opening the exam, Isabella confirms she is ready to start and then gets busy answering questions. On the first attempt at the exam, Isabella misses one question, which results in a score of less than 100. Sadly, that means she fails and the test must be retaken. She is allowed to evaluate her first set of answers to learn from her mistakes, and then she retakes the exam, this time passing with 100%. At this point, the only thing left is to complete her assessment. She finds her boss, Samuel Brown, and shows him all of the required skills she's learned. At that point, he is able to log into Teamwork, go to his team's skill matrix, and find Isabella's list. He opens her skill and navigates to the assessment section. At that point, he has an active drop-down where he can indicate that Isabella has mastered that section of the skill. Now that Samuel has signed off on her assessment, Isabella goes back into her skill, checks once more that it is all complete, and then requests an endorsement. She chooses to send her request to Samuel, who will then be notified of the request in his Teamwork. When Samuel receives a notification, he simply clicks on it to see all the details of Isabella's skill. He can make sure all sections are complete and evaluate her attempts at the exam. Sam can see that it took Isabella 2 tries to pass the test, and he is able to dig into the first attempt to see where she went wrong. Once he is satisfied that all is complete, he can go ahead and endorse her skill. Using AVEVA Teamwork, it is easy to organize knowledge into training and to make sure that the training is taken and understood by all employees who need that particular skill.